You know that feeling when you wake up, grab your fishing rod, and head to your favorite spot, expecting nothing but peace and quiet? Yeah, that's where I was headed one crisp morning, ready to cast a line into our little neighborhood Lake Me sanctuary for years. But when I got there, my stomach dropped. Dead fish everywhere, floating belly up, the water streaked with this eerie blue, reeking like someone dumped a vat of bleach into it. I'm Ethan Caldwell, a 38-year-old fishing guide who spent half my life studying lakes and rivers, learning their rhythms, their secrets. This place, Willow Creek Lake, was my daily ritual, a slice of calm in a hectic world. For 3 years, I'd been out here every dawn, tossing back anything under regulation size, picking up stray cans and wrappers, keeping it pristine. Never had an issue with the HOA, not a peep, until that morning when I saw the carnage. Fish I'd watched grow from fingerlings gone. The water, sick and shimmering with chemical streaks, told me this wasn't some natural die-off. This was deliberatia gut punch I couldn't ignore. The air stung my nose, sharp and chemical, like someone had poured industrial cleaner into our lake. I'm no stranger to water systems. My dad taught me to read them like a book when I was a kid. A healthy lake's alive, Ethan, he'd say, and when it's dying, something's seriously wrong. This was wrong, professional level wrong. The blue streaks screamed copper sulfate, stuff you don't just grab at a hardware store. Only water management pros get their hands on that kind of chemical, and it was concentrated heaviest near the North Shore, like someone had dumped it with purpose. Then I saw eat a crisp, white envelope taped to my front door, HOA letterhead glaring at me. A $150 fine for environmental damage and misuse of shared property. I read it twice, my blood boiling. Me? The guy who's been cleaning up after everyone else? The guy who throws back every fish that's too small? It didn't add up until I noticed the date. The notice was stamped yesterday, before the fish started floating. How do you fine someone for damage that hasn't happened yet unless you knew it was coming? My jaw tightened. Someone was playing dirty, and I had a pretty good guess who. Enter Margaret Voss, our HOA president, a 50-something real estate shark with a smile that could sell you a swamp and call it paradise. I'd crossed paths with her before, always polite, always polished, but something about her felt like she was sizing you up for a coffin. That morning, she came strutting down the path, heels clicking, her leather portfolio clutched like a shield. Ethan, maybe if you didn't treat our lake like your personal playground, we wouldn't have this mess, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I gestured at the dead fish. You think my fishing did this? Margaret, I've been doing catch and release for years. I'm a conservationist, for God's sake. She just shrugged, like my 15 years of expertise was a hobby she could dismiss. Then she let something slip that made my skin crawl. Besides, this lake won't be our problem much longer. Big upgrades are coming, real improvements for property values. Upgrades? Improvements? Warning bells went off. I started noticing things I'd missed: freshly dug dirt near the shore, big pipes running underground toward the houses. This wasn't random. Someone wanted this lake to look ruined, and Margaret was at the center of it. I dug out my HOA handbook, the one I'd actually bothered to read when I moved in. Fines like this needed a written warning, a 30-day correction period, a hearing, none of which I'd gotten. Margaret had skipped every step, and that wasn't sloppy. It was intentional. 2 days later, she called an emergency HOA meeting with barely a day's notice. Another rule broken, since our bylaws demand a week's warning. I showed up anyway, walking into a community center thick with tension, like a bar before a brawl. 30 neighbors sat in folding chairs, whispering, shooting me looks like I was some eco-terrorist. Margaret's assistant, a twitchy woman named Karen, blocked me at the door. Mr. Caldwell, due to the ongoing investigation, you'll need to sit in the back away from the main discussion. I kept my cool barely. That's not how HOA meetings work, Karen. Every resident gets a say. She didn't budge, but I could see Margaret smirking from the podium, loving every second of this. She stood up there in a sharp blazer, pearls gleaming, looking like she was pitching a corporate merger. We're here because one resident's reckless behavior has created a health hazard, she said, her voice cutting like glass. She didn't name me, but every head turned my way. Then she dropped a bomb. We have evidence this individual may have caused the contamination to dodge responsibility for his fishing. The room gasped. I felt like I'd been slapped. She was framing me for poisoning the lake? Then she held up a document, a pledge for me to sign, banning me from fishing forever. Buried in the fine print was the real kicker. Language about development opportunities and environmental impact documentation. She wasn't just after my fishing rod. She was trying to silence me for whatever she had planned. I stood up, heart pounding but voice steady. Per our bylaws, fishing bans need an environmental study and a resident vote. You can't just rewrite the rules, Margaret. Her smile turned icy. As president, I decide what's best for our property values, Mr. Caldwell. Maybe you should find a new place to cast your lines. The threat hung in the air, and then she made her mistake. In the chaos of neighbors arguing, she leaned to Karen and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "Get the development paperwork ready by Friday. We need that contamination proof for the city permits timelines moving up." My blood froze. Development? Contamination proof? This wasn't about me. This was about turning our lake into a paycheck. After the meeting, I overheard neighbors talking some already knew about construction and property value boosts. Margaret had been working them behind the scenes, building her army. But one guy, Tom Wheeler, my neighbor and a former HOA board member, stood up in the meeting. "We need independent water testing before any bans," he said, calm but firm. Margaret's face twisted with rage. "Your opinion's irrelevant now, Tom. Stick to your own yard." Her venom shocked the room, showing a side of her most hadn't seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. If Margaret was pushing a development deal, I needed proof. The HOA office was in the community center basement, barely secured. Around midnight, I slipped in through an unlocked side door, heart racing like I was in some low-budget thriller. Margaret's desk was a gold minute permits for a luxury condo complex, emails with Willow Development Group, and call logs to water treatment companies asking about algae control and emergency contamination protocols. This wasn't new. She'd been planning to tank our lake for months, probably paying cash to keep it quiet. I snapped photos of everything, barely escaping before a security guard's flashlight swept the hall. The next morning, hell broke loose. A sheriff's deputy showed up with a lawsuit from Margaret $5,000 for harassment and a restraining order to keep me from the lake. My neighbors started shunning me. Even Mrs. Larson, whose kids loved watching me fish, hurried them inside when I waved. Worse, my tap water started smelling off metallic wrong. If this was spreading to our pipes, every family was at risk. I called my buddy Nate, a water safety expert and lawyer. "She's playing hardball, Ethan," he said. "Lawsuits like this can bleed you dry. She's betting you'll fold." I was sinking, doubting myself, when Tom showed up at my door, looking like he hadn't slept. We need to talk inside, away from windows. He pulled out a stack of emails from his old HOA login, dated weeks before the fish died. Margaret had been emailing Willow Development, promising comprehensive contamination evidence for $75,000 to fast-track permits for condos. They needed the lake unusable to justify filling it in. She'd orchestrated the poisoning, risking our drinking water, our kids' water for a payout. I felt sick, furious, like I could punch through a wall. Margaret called me that afternoon, her voice like a blade. "Sign the fishing ban, Ethan, or this gets worse for your reputation, your property, your life." I laughed, shaky but defiant. What's your game, Margaret? Poisoning our water for condos. Her silence was deafening, then a cold laugh. You're in over your head, Mr. Caldwell. She hung up, but I knew weed rattled her. Tom and I decided to fight back with facts. We planned a public water testing event, a family picnic with Nate's team, bringing EPA-grade equipment to test the lake in front of everyone. No secrets, no spin, just science. The neighborhood buzzed, some excited, some nervous. Margaret countered with her own independent consultants, setting up a booth at our event like she owned the place. She even accused me of breaking into the HOA office, flashing security footage that was just grainy nonsense. The crowd murmured, unsure who to trust. Nate's team got to work, pulling samples while Margaret hired suits, did their own tests, claiming seasonal variations. 2 hours in, Nate's tablet lit up with results. Copper sulfate 20 times above safe levels, plus lead and mercury. This wasn't an accident, it was sabotage. Tom stepped up, holding the emails. Margaret took $75,000 to poison our lake for a condo deal. The crowd erupted, parents clutching their kids. Mrs. Larson's voice breaking as she shouted, "My son's been sick for weeks." Margaret's consultant stammered, "These documents could be fake," but a neighbor, a paralegal, shut him down. "Those email headers don't lie. This is fraud." Then Margaret did something insane. Maybe it was panic, maybe denial, but she marched to the lake's fountain, scooped up the poison water, and drank it, shouting, "See? It's fine." Within minutes, she was doubled over, vomiting, her face gray. Paramedics rushed in as she collapsed, the crowd watching in stunned silence. It was like watching her own lies choke her. I didn't stop her, call it karma. EPA agents rolled in, badges flashing, taking samples and statements. Margaret faced federal charges up to 10 years for environmental crimes. Residents started a class action lawsuit, demanding medical costs and damages. She pleaded guilty to fraud and contamination, got 3 years probation, a $75,000 fine, and a lifetime HOA ban. Her real estate career? Toast. Tom took over as interim president, passing new rules for transparency and water monitoring. The lake's cleanup took 8 weeks, but it's thriving now, a protected space no developer can touch. Standing by the water now, casting my line, I feel whole again. This place isn't just a lake heights home. Proof we can fight greed and win. Margaret thought she could bury me, but the truth floated up like it always does. What would you have done in my shoes? Drop a comment. Tell me, would you fight or walk away? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep shining a light on the truth, no matter how deep they try to hide it.